Good evening. You hear me? Okay, good. You guys are fast coming in, finishing up your food, making it in here. So happy to see so many of you this evening. My name is Dr. Nicole Coppell. As many of you know, I'm the MBA director, and I'm also a professor in the Department of Information Management and Business Analytics. We are thrilled to have a big crowd. We need some extra chairs. It's always good when we have extra chairs coming in for one of our speaker events. But again, you guys aren't here to see me, you're here to see our featured speaker. So our speaker tonight is Michael Ehret, the head of Global Talent Management for Johnson & Johnson. Michael is responsible for the attraction and development of a global and diverse talent across the enterprise. He oversees succession management, talent development, talent acquisition, people analytics, talent mobility, performance management, and assessment in his role at J&J. You sound very busy, by the way. He's focused on making people smarter about people and enabling personalized growth through data and technology, building highly capable leaders, and filling talent gaps. Prior to his current role, Michael held a number of executive positions at J&J, including Head of Succession Management and VP of Talent Development, with responsibility for global leadership development and learning. Prior to joining J&J, he held HR business partner and talent management positions at Bristol Myers Squibb and Cigna. Michael has a PhD in global leadership and change management and a doctorate in education in organizational leadership, both from Pepperdine University. Tonight's topic is responding to market forces and the evolution of skills-based hiring, which will be discussed in we call this fireside chat minus the fire, but will be discussed in conversation with Michael and one of his colleagues, Adam Schreiber. Adam is the Global Director, Transformation Management Office at J&J, and we're very lucky because he is a member of our MBA Advisory Board. In his role at J&J, Adam is tasked with employee upskilling and corporate culture redesign. As part of this role, he interacts very closely with HR senior leaders at J&J in order to meet their objectives and help drive the initiative. Adam holds a graduate degree from Wharton in executive education in strategy and business management. Please welcome me in welcoming both Michael and Adam. Thank you. Before I let them begin the conversation, I just want to give you a little bit of the rules of the game here. We are going to let Michael and Adam talk in this fireside chat type discussion. And then we're going to, about 6:45 or so, we're going to be able to, if some students who might have a 7 o'clock class, if you need to leave, to leave, at that point you can politely exit. But please don't if you don't need to, because at that point we're going to also break and then start a quick Q&A session for about another 15 minutes or so. So that will really give you your chance to sort of ask those burning questions that you might have. So please, if you are able to and don't need to rush off to class, we do encourage you to stick around. So without further ado, let's get started.
Thank you. Sounds good. You're all able to hear us? Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for coming. And
I was going to check. Okay. Sounds like you can hear me. By the way, I didn't know if that was like a Montclair State ploy where you have an outside speaker come in and you see how many students come for dinner, and you count the chairs, and then you pull some out, and then you feel great as an external speaker. Like, they need to bring in more chairs. There's so many people that want to hear you talk. Thank you all for being here. Seriously, that's
thank
great.
You. And thank you for joining, too. As was mentioned, I have the privilege of sitting on the advisory board for the business school, but a greater privilege of being able to work with you. And so the goal, obviously, is, I have some notes, but the goal is to make it as unscripted and as organic as possible. So, I think, like I said, I have a great privilege of having a front row seat to a lot of the work that you and the leadership team are doing. And so what I'm hoping to do today is just have a kind of candid conversation about an overview of your career, suggestions, et cetera, and hopefully have some time for some Q&A. So if it's okay with you, I'll get started.
Sounds good.
So first question, let's unpack your career a little bit. So give us the kind of the lay of the land. Obviously, you have an incredible resume. that was just mentioned. But tell us, what got you here, what drives you, what are the experiences that made you the leader that you are today?
Yeah, and Adam's going to be able to help me here too because he's being extremely humble. He leads transformation for our company, and he's at the right in the crux of a lot of the cool work we're doing. So, although I'm the headliner, I think Adam's going to give us some great insights as well. So, again, thank you all for being here. We, as a starting point, maybe it's kind introduction and bio, but if you're anything like my wife or my mother, like you have no idea what any of that stuff means, like all these people analytics and succession management assessment. So maybe more in common language, for my career, I'm the head of talent management at Johnson & Johnson, or the chief talent officer. So first, maybe just to frame up the company, we're the largest healthcare company in the world. We're headquartered here in New Jersey. We have about 10,000 employees in New Jersey. We have 135,000 employees globally in 85 different countries. We're an $85 billion company. We serve about 1 billion people's lives every day. And we're broken up into two major sectors. So we sell pharmaceuticals, or what we now call innovative medicine as we get beyond drugs and drug delivery, and medical technology, so medical devices and med tech. So those are the two different businesses. My career, I started out, I grew up in Central Jersey. I'm a Jersey kid. I grew up in Trenton. I met my wife in high school, and I went off to the University of Richmond, Virginia, for undergraduate, and I was a finance major. So I was in the business school there. One thing that I would tell you all is, if there's anyone out there sitting in the audience that doesn't feel like they know what they want to do with the rest of their life, and what they're going to be when they grow up, that's completely fine. In fact, I would tell you that's sort of a good thing. One of the I think challenges that we have sort of in the educational system in the U.S. is this feeling of I've got to have it all figured out. Because I'd venture to say many of the advisory board members, Adam, et cetera, we're doing jobs that maybe we didn't study for or aspire to when we were 25 years old. So I entered college thinking I wanted to be a doctor. I moved over to the business school. I graduated as a finance major. My first couple of years out of school, I was working jobs in finance. I was in a rotational program, and the third rotation was a cross-functional rotation, and it was in performance management. So this was designing the performance management system for the company, like setting goals and getting reviews and all that kind of stuff. And I felt like that was what I really wanted to do, is how can I help people and organizations perform better? So I made the jump over to HR, and the last 25 years I've been in HR, kind of bouncing back and forth between HR business partner jobs. So those are HR jobs that are in a business, supporting a specific business, and jobs in talent management, primarily in leadership development. So I've been kind of studying and attempting to practice leadership my whole life. You've probably heard, I went to school a lot, kind of studying leadership, not because I felt like I had to, because I loved it. I'm maybe a little bit of a nerd. I love studying history and leadership. I've lived and worked in every country. Not every country, every region. So I've got Sao Paulo. I lived in China. I lived in Scotland, and I've been at J&J I've always been in healthcare, and I've been at J&J for maybe like the last 17 years.
Are there any relationships or specific experiences that happened earlier in your career that you would attribute to the path that you maybe, have been on now and has created you as a leader that you are today?
Yeah, I'm not someone that believes in luck, but for people to navigate companies and organizations, and generally for people to be happy, forget about life, there has to be this connection of opportunity meets preparation. So I don't believe in luck, but I believe opportunity meets preparation. And opportunities you can't always choose. So I have been fortunate that I've had a number of opportunities, and you can all tell her I said this if you ever seen my wife. Meaning my wife, for an example, that was a transformative moment when we were 16. The first half of my career, I would say, I didn't have a navigation system, which I think is actually good. I don't think you've got to, I'm going to do this job, then that job, then this job. I'm going to switch companies. Like that, it doesn't work that way. So I was guided in the first half of my career with, where do I want to learn? What interests me? I had one general principle going forward, which was advice given to me that I would pass on to you all, which is, if an opportunity doesn't make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, like a little bit scary, it's probably not the right one because it's not going to stretch and grow you in the right place. So I generally followed that strategy, and that led me to moving a lot. I didn't want to do the same thing twice. So I was always in HR after I'd made the switch from finance, but I never wanted to do. I never did up until my current job a role in the business and in corporate back to back. I always bounced back and forth, go to a different country, support a different group. So the first half of my career was really around learning and curiosity. Then, in the second half of my career, and I think this is, generally a path that you all can take, because I always think, and I take this from a report that Stanford did a few years ago, that based on where you are in your career, you should be declaring missions, not majors, right? So this notion of I'm going to be a finance person or accountant person or an HR, or like I'm going to work in this industry. It's more around what's important to me, what brings me energy. In my life, how do I balance the gives and gets? Because if there's more things the gots. So if there's more things you've got to do versus you get to do, your life's going to always be imbalanced, right? So I think this is the time in your life where you're really kind of granulating on what are my values? What's important to me? What is the type of industry I want to be in? What calls to me? What are the things day in and day out as I go to class or as I do, do internships or jobs? Where are those points in the day where I am bursting with energy because I love what I'm doing? And what are those things that are just draining me? Like I can't. This is the time to be inventorying that because it's going to help you make decisions around what you're going to do later on. So anyway, first half, follow learning. Just keep, for me at least, it was inspired by doing different things. The second half, I got a little bit more intentional around differentiation. So I really started thinking about, I'm getting to a point where there's less jobs, right? There's less opportunities, and they're really competitive. So there's other people that are, going for them, and they're really good too. So I need to start thinking about, based on my own ambition and sort of where I wanted to go, what's going to make me different? There's a great book by a guy named Seth Godin for any marketing-focused people out there called How to Spot a Purple Cow. It's a really small book. If you guys don't know Seth Godin, he's the one that came up with this notion of gamified advertising, like Candy Crush and all these other games that are actually marketing to you. So he wrote a book, and it generally was, if you're driving along the highway and you saw these black and white cows, and there was a purple and white cow, they would really stick out. And that really made an impact on me because it was this, how do you become a purple cow? So I started making career choices, not just, it still was on learning, and that doesn't make me a little nervous and that kind of stuff, but is it going to differentiate me? So that's why when I was offered an opportunity to work abroad, I said, I don't want to just go to, an English-speaking Western European country. Like I want to go into China. I want to live in China. I don't want to go to Singapore. I want to go to China. It was also a reason why when I, kind of came back, I looked around and said, not many of my peers have spent a lot of time in supply chain. They're mostly doing HR work and commercial and R&D, so I want to do supply chain. I did the quality group. It's also, part of the reason when I look around is I kept going to school because I love to learn, but also when I look around that peer set, that's a differentiation. So I started making more choices on differentiation. And then lastly, I'm sorry to, give you such a monologue.
It's all great stuff.
When the other opportunity, I talked about my wife, there's a lot of people along the way I was really fortunate to get to interact with. People like Adam. I learned from everyone, and I've had some, some far less, some not so good managers, but I've had some awesome managers. People that have given me opportunities that I probably wasn't quite ready for, that have advocated on my behalf, that have picked me multiple times for jobs because I had shown that track record of delivery. And I think you got to figure out at any point in your life, who is that that network of support. And when you grasp onto one of those great influencers, how do you cultivate that relationship?
No, I mean, I think, I mean, we see it in the business every day, but I think you're one of those people that are revered in the organization because you balance that art and science of leadership too, right? It's not just, I'm really competent in one thing, but it's emblematic of how the organization responds to the type of leadership. And I think we do that pretty well within J&J. One thing that resonated with that you were saying before is those challenges. It reminds me of like when I first got out of school, I felt like I had imposter syndrome in every job I got. I was constantly measuring myself against other people, which is not a great thing, right? You got to get really good at something. But I'm curious to know about, a little bit more about that, but any obstacles or adversity you've faced that you think are good for, either young talent or MBA students or master's students coming out, like, we're going to face adversity. How do you face it head on?
Yeah, well, I think that sentiment's a good one. There's going to be, just like in your life, there's going to be good times and hard times, and one of the core attributes actually for really successful employees and senior leaders is this notion of resilience. So it's coming, right? Whether you're going through or there will be hard times. For me, there's so many different examples of
Pick one.
Of what we can go through here. I'll give you one you talked about, and one like really honest, terrible behavior. A lot of times I see what Adam said, especially with great talent like you all as you enter a company, is this notion, I don't want to call it imposter syndrome, although I think that's well labeled. It's this notion of, I got a job. I got a job that I like. They're paying me for it. This is awesome, right? I better demonstrate some value. And people will come in their first 30 and 60, 90 days and make some missteps with the good intent of trying to make a favorable impression, right? And whether you're into a new company or into a new job or a new vice president, there is, some principles around, even if you do have it all figured out on day two, listen, ask questions, make sure that your opinions are informed and credible. Recognize the work of the past. So I see that as potential misstep. My misstep was actually when I was a new executive. So I became an executive at 35, and it was a big jump for me. And I did all this stuff. I read this book by Michael Watkins, The First 90 Days, like on day 92, and I was like, I made every mistake. So, I came in, guns a-blazing, just, you guys are doing this wrong, and we need to fix this, and that's why we're in this mess. And like, I just ruffled so many feathers, and luckily I had built, I think, enough of a rapport and a relationship that I had people that I could count on that would, pull me aside and be like, what are you doing? They hit me over the head. And I think everyone needs that in their life, is some people that will be utterly and completely honest and transparent with you because they care about you. So you guys, are you that's what your relationship we have here? That's great. Hold on to it. So I think that's, I think adversity, one of the organizational pieces, what we went through over the past few years with, I'm not just the COVID pandemic, but I say multiple pandemics we were facing. So it was racial or social inequity, injustice, what's happening now geopolitically in so many different fronts, almost all around the world. The adversity for old guys like me, as we grew up in a workplace where, like, when I was your age coming out of school, we didn't even have cell phones, right? So you would work and then you go home. There was no cell phone or laptop or iPad. Like, you were able to check out, and there was this notion of work and life. We called it work-life balance. And then technology advanced. Yeah. And I can remember, by the way, I remember telling my wife, thought it was so funny because I'd wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, and I would have an email queued up, and I'm like, I'm going to send this email at 2 a.m, and people just think I'm always working. She's like, that's completely crazy. And I said, well, I'm up anyway. So, yeah. But like, you'd start to get, it was work and life because that was unheard of. And then you have mobile technology and digital, and that took down some of that separation of work and life. Because now you have access all the time. And then COVID hit, and it was just life, right? We were meetings, and you all, some of you were going to school at this time, right? Right? So you're in Zoom, you get see people in the background. I mean, I've got, I had my 9-year-old daughter walk in the background with this giant inflatable dinosaur costume in one meeting, and it's just life.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if all of us are equipped to be able to deal with, the many things that each and every one of us deal with daily, whether it's the stresses of, mental health or the personal challenges that each of us had. And all of a sudden, with that wall sort of eviscerated, that's been really hard to adopt to. Is sort of it's easy if you have an employee come in and say, I broke my arm, I need to be out for the next week. But, it's different. They come and say, I'm having some real mental health issues and I need support. Like that's been a big growth for me and, lots of people, I would say, in positions of leadership or managerial roles.
I mean, it's a great point. We see it every day, and I'm sure there's not one right answer for it. But is there any advice that you have? I mean, given that coming into the complex work environment, I mean, we always joke around that your generation broke it for us. You could go home and have work-life balance. I don't know how to do it. It's easier said than done, right? I'm like, I'm going to close this now. Yeah. I have boundaries, and then something really important comes up, and it's sorry, honey, I got to do it. Is there any advice you have for
on the work-life balance?
Yeah, work-life balance, or just like that. We approached a little bit. I know we're going a little off script right here, but like the mental health stuff is becoming very, very apparent. We talk about it. We have hard conversations. I've had hard conversations with my managers of just being like, listen, I don't have it this week. Is that something normal that's becoming more normal?
It's becoming more normal.
Yeah.
It's becoming more normal. And I, quite frankly, I think you're going to run into variability of this, especially, as I said, with the old gang around people's comfortability with that. And not that they don't have the right intent, but just comfortability. So I think on the work-life front, I talked about this before. I encourage everyone, and it's something that I do every few months. It's this audit of sort of what's important to you and what's important in your life: family, friends, community, job, school, church, whatever it is. And and do a little bit of audit. It takes like 5 minutes around what's most important to me, and now where am I spending my time and energy, and is there an equivocation of that, right? So this happens a lot because we got to pay, we got to put food on the table and put a roof over our heads. Is you say maybe my family is most important, but you're spending 90% of your time working hours working. So then how do you spend the time that you do have and sort of keep that frame and make it the most meaningful? So if you only have that little bit of time, for me as a dad, I know there's times, and I'm far from perfect on this, where you're working 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever it is, and you come home, it's an hour before the kids go to sleep, and all you want to do is turn on the Knicks game and like fall asleep.
I know well.
And I'm not perfect in this, but that's where like I think about that and say, I only got an hour. Yeah. Like I gotta
be intentional.
Yeah, so you gotta be really intentional in the work life. I think on the challenges of sort of the supporting and working with the whole self, the first thing is we all have a responsibility, whether it's in the classroom or in a workplace, to try to make environments safe where people feel like they can be themselves, where they can be vulnerable, where they're not going to be judged or criticized or anything like that. So I think especially people leaders have a big onus to try to create safety. And then I think the second part is whether it's a direct report, a peer, a manager, whatever it would be, is as we invariably get into these times that each and every one of us will go through of adversity, being empathetic, being a good listener, making sure you're giving people time and energy. And then the last thing I would say is don't overstep. A lot of us are fixers, right? Like I want to make things better right away. And I don't know how, I know I'm not an expert from a psychology perspective. So what I try to do is reach out to people that I know who are expert, or be able to refer people to that I know who are expert and are really well equipped to deal with some of this, because you're not alone, right? It's sort of how do you pull in the resources of a great place like Montclair State University or Johnson & Johnson, whatever company that you're working for.
I mean, I think that kind of leads into a good question, right? So I think we do it and are starting to do it very well at J&J. But and not necessarily tied to this conversation, but what do you think kind of defines J&J as a great employer? What's our secret sauce or our differentiated value that you see? You've been here for a while, you have a good seat.
It's really good, right? Because we're like, this is a talk about talent and skills, and we're talking mental health, and so listen, there are a lot of great organizations in lots of different industries, profit, not-for-profit, et cetera. So I don't mean to make it sound like Johnson & Johnson is the be-all, end-all. We certainly have our opportunities, but I think what Johnson & Johnson has going for it is a little bit of the makeup of the company and our history. So the first is our values and purpose. So we're a healthcare company, right? At its essence, what that means is we're helping people live longer, healthier, happier lives. That's a pretty cool industry, at least from my perspective, to be in, right? It's different than, I don't know, selling credit cards, or I'd be careful because someone might be working for a credit card company here. It's a different calling, I would say. So I think the first is we tend to attract people at Johnson & Johnson based on our values and our purpose, which is articulated in a document that the son of our founder and our first CEO wrote in 1887, which was our credo. So this is a one page that stipulates our values, and it talks about service. You know, our first responsibility is to our patients and their mothers and fathers. And then it talks about our commitment to our employees and our communities, and then finally our stewardship. So I think the industry of healthcare, and then within it, Johnson & Johnson, our values and purpose is a differentiator. The second is the nature of our size. So being the largest healthcare company in the world, the breadth of development opportunities we can give people. You know, on 135,000 people, we move about 25,000 people every year into new jobs. 40% of our manager and above positions, when we do those moves, are either cross-sector, cross-function, or cross-geography. So it's living into this notion of this career playground, and you can, you know, do a lot of different jobs and careers and pathways within the same big company. The last thing I say, Adam was a big architect in this, is I'd venture to say I'm looking, you know, I'm out in the marketplace looking. I don't know if there's many companies that are advancing at the same rate we are around how to connect both candidates and employees to growth opportunities. So we just introduced this past year, and it's skills-based, but it's this, hey, candidate or employee, if you come in and you're willing to share your skills, so we can assess your skills and you can share your aspirations, we can digitally connect you to lots of growth opportunities, you know, including mentors, including gigs, you know, projects you can do to learn, jobs, career paths. Like there's a lot we can do, you know, following the models of the Amazons and Ubers and Airbnbs of the world, which is we got lots of growth opportunities and we got lots of people that want to learn and grow. How do we better connect the two?
Yeah. Here's a softball question for you.
Okay.
What does the future of talent look like? I'm just joking. It's not a softball law. But
The
what is the
future of talent? I'm looking at the future.
Yeah,
I should
right?
ask you all
Right.
what you think the future of
That's
talent.
why I was the softball was right here.
Yeah, seriously, this is a good like pressure test because I'd make some projections around the future of talent. I think talent employees, the workforce, has a different set of expectations between employer and employee than they did, you know, even 10 years ago. I think what we as employers need to do to harness the power of the future of talent is really provide opportunities for fulfillment, like so that people feel fulfilled, not just they're getting a paycheck, but they're doing something important, that they're learning, they're growing financially, developmentally, et cetera. I think that the second is this personalization effort. I think talent globally has greater expectations that they get consumer grade like experiences at their company. So whether it's me selecting my benefits or getting information about how to do my job, like, I mean, I don't know, I went to a wedding a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I forgot how to tie a bow tie. So you go on YouTube, how do you tie a bow tie?
Yep.
Do it right away.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I think that's the expectation that even I have, which is, you know, how do I onboard to a new job? I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to get information. I can immediately apply it. You know, also, you know, data suggests that the world is moving to be much more fluid and flexible and I think it may be a little bit of how do we return some sort of balance. But, you know, depending on the study you look at in the U.S., there's anywhere from 10 to 35% of our current workforce that's in contractor or contingent jobs, contingent-based jobs. Which would indicate to me that the marketplace is telling us we want to do work, we want to deliver tasks, but we also want some more ownership around how we manage our time. And we want the autonomy to be able to pick and choose some of the stuff that we're doing. I think employers are going to have to understand and appreciate that so that big companies like Johnson & Johnson in essence, replicate this notion of contracts or contingent. So it's basically, we're going to bring you in because of who you are, right? You're a great leader, you have great behaviors, you're, interpersonally really good, and then you've got some technical skills. We're going to hire you and bring you in for that. And if you're aligned to our company mission, then we're going to put you on gigs, right? So it might be in the future that, there's not a job description. I'm applying to this job and I do this job. It's, you're coming to join a great company. Yeah. You have a skill set. We're going to continue to grow that skill set, and we're going to apply it to the work that's most meaningful, right? So I might be on a full-time project. I mean, this is a little bit like your job, right?
Kind of, yeah.
You might want to explain what your job like.
Yes, I mean, please, it's not about me, but yes. So as part of my job leading the transformation office in terms of change management, I get deployed to enterprise transformations, right? So I have a full-time role that is described at what I do, but I could be durational on a program. I was working with Michael for 2 years, standing up J&J Learn, a learning and development organization and ecosystem. I'll be working closely with you again on TA North Star work. So the goal is to create great technical leadership and change leadership skills. So my job, I can get out, the program team continues to work it, and on to the next one. So I have to have a unique skill or hire in unique skills that are able to fulfill that, and also be okay with changing what you're doing every couple of years.
Yeah. So this wasn't orchestrated. I looked at Adam like, this is it. So, we hire Adam because,
sharing.
and
Thank
if you look at his experience, he's built up a career of expertise in change management, change leadership, transformation, et cetera, through a number of different consultancies. And so we hire him for a skill, change leader. And then we say, all right, for 2 years, you're going to go launch this J&J Learn thing. Then you're going to help build the business case for this recruiting system. Then you're going to come back and do that. We could take that skill set and say, you're going to work on the next acquisition. There's always change and transformation, but I think Adam's job is actually a representative for a lot of jobs kind of moving forward, where it can be more skill-based. Even quite honestly, in entry-level jobs, whether they be operators or analysts or sales reps, which is, you're building a skill, right? And that doesn't mean you have to do the same thing. If you're working as an entry-level operator in a supply chain, that doesn't mean you have to work on the same line 8 or 10 hours a day for 15 years. Like, you're building a skill. We need to take that skill and deploy it in different ways.
Yeah. What do you think are or will be kind of some of the most important skills or leadership characteristics for young professionals or early in career that we want to, at least maybe now and in the future? If you could hone in on a couple.
Yeah, I'm probably not sharing anything that you all wouldn't know. I think there's some aspects of leadership that are unchanged. So I think, at its core, we need people who like and can learn. So I think learning approach is really important. It's a testament to all of you who have pursued advanced education, whether it be at the master's or undergraduate level. To your commitment to that, but learning is really important. I also think agility, adaptability is super important. I mean, the two biggest predicators of upward potential, by the way, are agility and situational self-awareness, right? So if anyone, might not know what that is, it's being able to get into a situation and being able to assess what's needed, right? And what are the dynamics between leaders and followers and the task at hand. So those are the two predicators for upward potential. But I would say learning, agility. I think generally, for me, I always put a lens on people that have high drive and are really motivated, people that are really strong communicators, people that are empathetic and care about others. So those are something, like, you could have asked me that question 50 years ago and I would have said probably the same thing. Yeah. I think what's changed now is a couple technical or more technical skills, which is we absolutely need people that have, fluency within technology and data, using technology to make things easier and better, and using data to make informed, more objective decisions. And at minimum, having a fluency, you don't have to be like to the nth degree into a specific technology or being able to code every specific solution, but being able to understand what the technology can do, and being able to create an environment where you can harness that. And then the last thing, and I go back to, one of the points I've made a couple times already is, I think great leaders at the end of the day manage energy.
Yeah.
I think leadership is all about managing energy. I think great leaders are able to manage energy for themselves and others by doing three things: by catalyzing energy, so really getting exciting and building energy for the things that are important; by channeling energy to the things that are most important; and then lastly, conserving energy. So, and this is the hardest one: not spending any energy on the things that aren't important. Which goes back to that audit. Like when you think about your life and how it's like my daughter the other day, like she was, she was doing her homework. She's a hockey player. She's up late doing her homework. And, she's supposed to watch 30 minutes of like news on like CNN 10. And she had all this math homework. And she's really, so I said, why are you doing that first? Like you should do your math homework and then you can watch this news before you fall asleep. Right? There's aspects of conserving and channeling energy even at like that age that you're trying to build up, which is how am I using my time? And if there's things you're putting energy on, I mean, I think I use a line a lot with my team, which is how do you focus on the essential, not the meaningful? Because you all, how you opt to use your time, it's all cool, it's all good, it's all meaningful, right? There's value to be attributed, but you got to start with the essential and kind of work your way back from that.
I love that. Got one more question before I think we're moved to Q&A. Bit of advice that Michael would give 25-year-old self. Is there any, or was there a bit of advice that you got early in your career that you were like, wow?
Jeez. I think we've talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
I was going to go one direction, but I'll tell you the other. Some of the best advice I got, and it's a little bit learning from the mistakes, right, is I can remember early in my career, I was sort of at the manager level and so forth. I had my kids and my family at Disney World. And I can remember the day at Disney World being 90% of it, my 3 kids and my wife off somewhere, doing rides and stuff, and me walking around the park on calls all day. I spoke to it was actually 2 CEOs ago, but I was offboarding. We've only had 8 CEOs in our 138-year history. So, from a succession perspective, it's not many who've led J&J. So we had one outgoing CEO, and I remember asking him that same question: what advice would you have? And he said, Michael, the amount of birthday parties I missed, kids events, et cetera, in my garage taking calls.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember any of that stuff, but I missed all that. So that would be, like, if I'm really sincere and transparent, advice would be that, the meaningful versus essential.
Yeah.
The what's important, where do you need to be right now? I could kill myself. I could strangle my younger self for doing that at Disney World. I don't remember what the calls were, right? But I'll always remember missing that day. So again, it's a little bit of a lesson for maybe all of us, which is taking the time to inventory what's truly important to you and making sure that you're living into that and demonstrating it every day through how you spend your time, where you put your energy, and how you act.
That resonates with me. I saw something recently that was a person talking about, when you're older, the only people who are going to remember that you worked late are your kids.
Oh, that's a great one.
And,
I love that,
with 2 young kids, I find myself kind of balancing that as well. So I appreciate that perspective. With that, just thank you for your time. Thanks for coming up from home. I know you're in the Princeton area today, so appreciate it. I live in Montclair, so it's easy for me to get home.
You can almost walk home, right? Yeah.
Could. It might take a little extra time until after sleep. But no, I really appreciate it. I hope that the folks here got a little bit out of it. And I think I know some folks have to break for class, but we do want to open it up for Q&A should there be any questions, which I hope there are.
I do hope we have several questions, but you know what, I think we might have time for maybe 2 questions before.
Oh.
Especially if someone has to go for class. If you want to raise your hand, we could grab somebody.
Got 2 ladies right there.
Right here, and then
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I really appreciate it. I'm sure all of us do. My name is Olive. I am a DJ, radio host, arts educator at NJPAC, and the CEO of Brazilian Babe Hot Sauce. That being said, I need to know, How do you fit in those moments of like, the self-care and the taking care of the mental health when you have a packed life, Do you have any practices that you have daily or like moments that you take? I'm trying to be oriented by people like you because that's where I'm trying to be.
So thanks for the question. I feel like, listen, can anyone get your show or what?
I'm actually on WMSC here at
Is that right?
yeah.
It's got a great
I'm
voice
a
for it.
student again. That was one of two alumni shows.
So cool.
Awesome.
Awesome. So let's see. I think it's hard, right? I think it's hard to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. What I try to do is my self-care time is usually after the kids go to bed. I'll go down and I'll get on the elliptical or the bike, and it's not really a workout. It's me more watching TV, like moving really slow. But it's 45 minutes that I take every day just to sort of disconnect and decompress. The other thing that I do, that this was advice or coaching that was given to me by the former head of talent at the Air Force, is what he called a flight log. And it only takes a few minutes, but it's on Sunday nights. I do this religiously. I write down what is the one thing I'm most proud of accomplishing this week, and what are the 3 things I need to do the following week, right? And it's just really thinking through it. The other thing that's really helpful if you have time on the Sunday night is to go through your week.
Yeah.
Where am I spending my time? What do I need to be prepared for? Maybe to that conserve, channel, catalyze. Is there anything that I really don't need to do? But those are maybe, I'd be interested in anyone here. Adam,
Well, it's interesting. I do something similar to flight log, but it's more of a mindfulness thing. I find myself, when I find myself actually starting to get a little bit like the anxiousness of, did I complete my tasks? Did I do what I need to do? Did I prioritize things? I actually try and pull myself away, even for 3 minutes, to write how I'm feeling at that moment. Because then I know at that moment, what is causing me anxiety? Can I solve it, or can I move on? And it helps me prioritize. And it's a new thing that I started doing. And it's been very helpful because I hide it well, but I'm an extremely anxious person. And if I don't succeed in my tasks, I feel as though it pulls me backwards. So I've started just kind of taking 3 minutes at a time to just say, can I solve this, or do I need to move on? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I've heard this. That's really interesting. I've heard this too for people that have trouble sleeping, where you get really anxious. Is this notion of the act of getting this down and being able to say, all right, I know this is keeping me worried, but I'm gonna allow myself to rest. I'm gonna pick this up tomorrow, and it's almost directing your psyche.
It is.
I'm gonna take that up. That's a really good suggestion.
And then next to all of them, something as well.
You spoke a lot about work-life balance and also the movement towards contract work. As an employer, as a leader, how do you, or what advice do you have or encouragement do you have to the new working generation to move towards a full-time corporation job versus going towards that contract work where you have the, quote, better work-life balance?
Yeah, and thanks. It allows me to clarify a little bit too, is when I say contract contingent work, I'm actually thinking about it in the constructs of a company, right? So it's not necessarily like we're just going to hire all contractors. But so if that was unclear, thank you. I guess advice I'd have is first off, you all have achieved what you've achieved thus far, I would suspect, with a combination of talent and grit and resilience. And I think the same can be applied to how you think about approaching your career, which is, I would start with, from a control perspective, where do you want to, like, what industry do you want to be in, and what geography do you want to be in, and start honing down to the places that are targets of the different kind of companies or industries you want to work for. And then I would tell you, our CEO says this all the time, get into the organization however you can. Like, the entry point is less important. It doesn't have to be in a high potential leadership development program. It can be through any means. Get in and prove yourself, and it's a lot easier to navigate a company once you're in there. I remember when I was right out of school, I did temp work. Like I started out doing temp work at Continental Insurance. I ended up working for Cigna, unloading trucks into the storage, but it got me in the company. I did a really good job, and I worked from you navigate and work from there. So I think targeting, I think also, you all probably know this. It's, J&J, we have tons of candidates. We have tons of applicants. To think that you're going to just post for a job and they're going to find your resume amongst everything else happens, but it's not always, like, we miss a lot of great talent too, to be honest. So I think it's sort of, how do you figure out and navigate whatever connections and network you can to make sure that you're getting the right, visibility. LinkedIn's a great tool for that. Handshake's a great tool for that. I mean, you're connected to the world through technology. It requires a lot of effort and energy, but if you really want to focus and target into a company, I would activate the network that's connected to that to help you do it.
It's interesting you say that. I was looking at the career site recently, and ever since I've had my email handle, which is forever ago because it's my last name, but it's it logs and shows you how many times you applied to different roles throughout the years, and it's they obviously missed me many times, but I'm happy I'm here now. Yeah. Yeah. We got a couple questions over there. They have microphones.
You want to give one more question?
Oh, she had her hand up for a while as well. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for being here. My name is Taylor. I'm a graduate of Montclair State 2 times, graduate of this particular program, the MBA program. So funny, my dad sent me, my dad sent me this. He spends more time, I guess, on the Montclair website than I do. So he was like, is this something you'd be interested in? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So my background is played basketball here, went through the MBA program. Most of my career was spent at Bed Bath & Beyond Corporate in the integrated marketing team. But when I got my hands into influencer marketing and just seeing from the brand side those opportunities, I transitioned during the pandemic to represent influencer and creator talent, content creators, if anybody doesn't know what that means. So my ears kind of just started ringing a little bit when you mentioned like skills-based hiring. And I know you said to this guy right here that you were speaking more to like contractor work. From my perspective, I'm seeing a lot of, I guess, just in this industry, a lot, really just in the job market in general, I'm seeing a lot of people like start careers in different ways. Like they are getting certificates, they are building experience with their phone or whatever it is, and not so much having these degrees. I guess my question is, how would you say is the best way for a candidate, whether they have a degree and a bunch of little gigs going on, or they just come from like a gig-based background, how do you think is the best way for them to communicate those skills in like an interview setting? I know we know the whole STAR method, whatever, but like if there's any way that you can kind of explain what that looks like and how, I guess, us or anybody in the job market in a practical sense could display those skills and their talent.
Yeah. First, I have to acknowledge, Taylor, I have a hearing disability. So you said I played basketball and I got my MBA here, right? So what I heard was I went to the MBA, and I was like, wow, she was really good.
It's funny, I did work at the NBA too.
Oh,
for 2 years afterwards.
There you go. So what a good question. Listen, I think all companies are in a different place as it relates to their hiring practices. I think there's some companies that may be a little bit more traditional in terms of what they're looking for. And when I say traditional, it is these analogs of what we use as criteria, right? So degrees, years of experience, credential, whatever that would be. If you're targeting a company like that, you got to talk in that language, right? So, that's going to be the stuff that's attractive. I think there's other companies, I mean, like at Johnson & Johnson, as we're progressing more towards skills, it's really looking after that job requisition or that success profile and honing in on the skills that are required and, and positioning yourself and being able to present those skills in the best way. So whether it's through an application or through an interview or a digital interview or whatever it would be, it's lining that up. Yeah.
I had a fairly unconventional path too to corporatehood. I'm a failed entrepreneur. I guess not failed. A lot of lessons learned, but it wasn't just like I'm going to go and graduate and go and end up at Johnson & Johnson. So I think there are different paths, but I agree with everything you said. I think, well, what's conventional now? I think it's just.
Yeah. There's lots of different entry points. I think the most important thing is, I talked about before, is your mission. What's important to you? What do you care about in a company? And then I always tell people, once you figure out what you want to do, just start doing it. Like, you want to work at Johnson & Johnson? Hey, I'm willing to work 2 hours for free every week. Let me get my foot in the door. And that takes grit, right? And that's what, I think it's one of the great attributes of the student body here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I did run over
No,
about
I know
3
it's not
minutes.
rude.
It's
I'm just-
okay.
yeah, no, it's fine.
So as I mentioned, we're doing exactly as planned. We're going to just have, I know some of you are politely walking out the door.
tried to
which
get you
are
exempt
still
from
being
class,
polite.
but-
Yeah.
Please forgive them. They are going to class, which is
Yes.
the right thing to do. For those who want to stick
get those
around and
skills.
ask more questions, we're going to stick around for another 15 minutes. But as some people are walking out, we have a small gift for each of you to thank you so much for, already without most of the Q&A,
Thanks,
you've
Ash.
shared a
Yeah.
significant amount of information. So I wanted to give each of you
Thank
a
you.
little gift on behalf of the
Thank you very much.
Louisiana School of Business.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank
Enjoy
you.
your classes, folks.
Okay.
So
And
we'll
for those
stay- yeah,
people
we'll
who
stay
are
put.
sitting around, you're welcome to kind of move in a little closer, and it'll be more intimate, and you get a better chance
should
to
get the
ask
big
your
one.
questions.
Make sure there's no emergency. My phone's like blowing up.
I took it out of my pocket. I don't know if that's great. Thank you. That's great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, do we have anyone who wants to ask questions?
We've got two right there. I don't know if we. Right up in the second row, there were two hands.
Okay. Hi, my name is Supreet.
Oh.
Thank you so much for coming here and for sharing your knowledge. It really, gives us a perspective. My question is, I don't know if it's controversial, but I'm going to ask any which way. With the oncoming of AI, artificial intelligence, we all know it's going to get a good grip in 5-10 years. So I have a fear that I'm an accountant by profession. So I have a fear that in 5-10 years, whatever skills I have learned or honed on, it's all going to go away. So I wanted to ask, what is J&J's take on AI, and how do you see this company to retain, to manage talent? Is it really a threat for people like us who make majority of the workforce? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want this to sound derogatory. I hate to tell everyone this, but all of your skills will get outdated, AI or not, right? I think, the stuff that I learned in school, that I've got credential and et cetera, is outdated. Everyone's skills shelf life has a tenure. So I wouldn't be worried about that. That's going to be up to us to sort of consistently upskill and learn and grow in different places. I think generally, the view of our company is we don't see AI as a threat. AI is going to be a way to augment and help people to work smarter.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, I'll give you a good example of this. We got 700 recruiters at J&J, and those recruiters are saying, geez, if you can have an AI or Gen I that's out there looking for, people, are we going to have a job in the future? And, what we would tell those those individuals is, there's always going to be a need for humans. But the question is, how do we divert and put that attention and start preparing you for where it's needed most, right? So it's not going to be, what we won't need recruiters for is when we have 1,000 applicants for one position. You've got a ton of applicants. We can overlay Gen AI and assessment and be able to filter through those candidates, matching on skills, being able to do assessment. They won't have to do that. What we need them on is finding the hardest to find talent out there where there's much more demand than supply. So the job that we have, J&J companies, and I think for all of us, I'm dealing with this, Adam's dealing with this, is how do we start to forecast the impact that AI will have on certain jobs and start to redirect our efforts to the places where we can add even more value, right? So it's largely the transactional stuff that will get supplanted by AI, but it's always going to be a partnership. I mean, I think AI, the one thing I would say about AI is, and we're doing a lot of testing, experimenting, give you a ton of examples. One thing we know for sure about AI is we'll never have to start with a blank sheet of paper, right? You'll never have to start from, how do I do this? What's the first cut? But it's going to always need to have a human doing the final audit, right? A human making sure that it all makes sense and connects. And yeah, I think it's a great, and I appreciate the vulnerability in the question, because I think we're all of us are thinking about that, of how AI will impact kind of the work that we're doing or we aspire to do.
Hi, my name's Alyssa. I'm a senior, and I have a comment for you guys, not a question. I just want to say thank you so much for being so passionate in your jobs and really advocating for professional development and employee growth, because as somebody who's going to be incoming into the workforce soon, I find it really important that companies really advocate for their employees and push them to be the best, and, you know, how is that? Pushing them out of their boundaries to find growth within the same company. So I just want to say thank you for doing your jobs, because I know there's a lot of people who really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the comment.
And good luck.
Hi, my name is Mohammed. I have one question for like upcoming analysts or anything like that. What's the best approach to get to the companies, because they require a lot of, like, the job market is so, it's not, well, it is on demand, but it's like so tight, and like you can't really get your foot in the door as you used to back in the days. So what's the best advice in order to get your foot in the door without experience, or at least with minimum experience? Thank you.
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, right? And I think, you know, if you look at the market right now, and you know, retention is or attrition's really low, and you know, there's I think some pent up supply. Regardless of that cycle, I think this is always a big question: is sort of how do you break through? How do you be that purple cow I talked about? You know, this is where I go back to, you know, drive, persistence, et cetera, which is, if you figure out what you really want to do, you want to be an analyst, right? Then if you really want to do that, then you'd be willing to probably go above and beyond, right? It's a good indicator. If you're not willing to go above and beyond, it might not be the right calling. But I always sort of encourage people, number one, like I said before, think about the ecosystem and how might you establish, you know, a network that might be able to support you in your pursuit, whether it's through a company or a connection or an intro or whatever it would be. The second is, you know, there's an aspect of volunteerism, being able to go above and beyond, that, you know, not too many, there's no downside. So if you put yourself in the place of a hiring manager, you know, and you say, I really want to get into this, can I demonstrate what I can do? Can I do a little project? Can I, you know, I wouldn't be adverse, similar to what I did, going through a temp agency, a contractor firm, a contingent, a Kelly Services, whatever it be, because, you know, that is an awesome way. We hired 10,000 people at 2,000 people. 2,000 people at J&J were conversions from contractors last year. It's a great way in for the I would call it more the entryway, analyst, et cetera. So, you know, there's maybe a few ideas.
If I can add something too, I think, you know, I'm speaking from personal experience. I think when I was graduating and I was a young professional, unintentionally, but I had a fairly large ego, where I was like, that's beneath me, right? I'm not going to do that. Why would I have to do that? My predecessor didn't have to do that. And I think if you can shed that, and like Michael was saying, is just kind of go a little bit further, you become a little bit more distinctive, right? We hire people in because we know they're going to be a great part of our culture and our team. And sometimes that is the above and beyond. But I think, like I said, like it took me a while to shed it. It took a humbling experience. But I think sometimes we get in our own way, and if you can shed that, easier said than done. But going above and beyond, I just wanted to add to that, because I think speaking from experience. I was kind of walked into a couple walls when I was younger.
I think too, as it goes back to time and how you spend your time. So even if you don't have the perfect timing, I graduate, I don't have a job yet, how do you figure out what's important and start working to that? Like, so you really take advantage of the time. So what is the job? Even if I don't love it, then I'm going to be able to maximize income and spend as little of time as possible. And how do I continue to upskill? Do I get additional, credential, skill, volunteer, whatever it would be? But it's sort of working our way through it.
You have a? Sorry, I don't know.
Hi, how are you? Thank you both for being here. My name is Gabriel. I'm a director of finance, and I'm currently an MBA candidate. The question I have for you is, how, as an executive, do you continue to seek feedback, and what advice would you have to this group about seeking and receiving feedback?
Yeah, there is an interesting dynamic in most organizations, which is the more senior you get, the quieter it becomes, right? As you probably noted as a director. I guess not that it's perfect, but maybe a strategy that I take is I try to make it really easy on people. So I target who would be able to give me meaningful feedback, and then I'll, like with my boss, for example, this is something I've already prepared for the year end to say, I want to keep learning and growing. When we have our year-end meeting, I want to understand the one thing that I could do to make me better in 2024. So you set the expectation, you're really clear in asking. Now, many leaders, I think this will come naturally. They're always giving feedback and coaching. But I think there is an aspect, for whatever reason, and dynamic, the more senior you get, where it's rarer to get feedback and coaching. So you got to go out and get it.
Hello, thank you both for taking the time to speak to us today. My name is Albert Antomate. I'm a graduate student here, MBA student. Mr. Ehret, did I pronounce it correct?
You got it right, yeah.
Yes, sir. You spoke a little bit about the importance of managing your time, and you spoke about managing energy, and you gave us examples of your past, your family experiences, applying time here versus applying time there. And then you also spoke about managing energy, I guess, for your team as well. I'm wondering, what does that look like? You mentioned earlier in your career you made some mistakes where you ruffled feathers the wrong way. So how do you manage people's energy, and what does it look like so that you don't ruffle feathers?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So, managing your team's energy, I think, can probably be most impactful by focusing on a few things as a people leader. First off, and we don't make any assumptions about feedback and coaching, I think it's really important for all of us to invest a little bit in time in understanding what is important to someone. So I'll give you another learning from failure. When I was an early people leader, I made the presumption that everyone wants to get promoted and wants to get paid more. That's what they want. My job as a manager is get them promoted and get them paid more. So I'm managing, it's probably the best person I ever hired externally for, I don't know, a year and a half in. And she was my head of assessment. Adam is this person. And I remember a year and a half in, she brought in this assessment. It was a Hogan assessment. And she said, before we start on the career dialogue, I want you to take a look at this. And when I looked at it, basically what I saw was ambition and commerce, so promotion, were super low. But what was really high for her was learning approach, right? So in essence, what she was telling me is, you're managing me like everyone else. But what's really important to me is I just want to learn and grow. I could stay at this level the rest of my career. I'm paid well. It's not that. I want to get paid more, but it's not as important. You got to keep stretching me and learning and growing, right? So I think first, employees and managers, and this is what we tried to do with our J&J Learn, is to facilitate a dialogue of what do you value, what's important to you, how do you like to operate, and let's have that dialogue. The second thing in managing energy of your team is there's common pitfalls where, it's cold outside, the heat's on, and the window's open, all the heat's seeking out. And it's typically unclear or too many priorities. right? The second, I think, is you don't have the right capacity, which is usually linked to the priorities. You don't have the right capabilities or skills, or the team member doesn't. Or the fourth is you're bogging them down with bureaucracy. There's too many status updates and meetings and emails and all that stuff. So I think about organizational energy with these different dimensions, but I think the most important thing is being really clear and setting what the priorities are in a manageable way. Those are the three things that you need to do.
I had a really interesting, I have a MVLDP working for me. MVLDP is our military vet leadership development program. So they go through rotations. And in the first week working with this gentleman, this guy Will, he came to me with an email of working with Will. And it was his working style.
I love that.
And how he seeks feedback, how he takes feedback. And I thought it was incredible, right? Like I was just like, I know exactly how to work with this guy.
This should be the practice at the beginning of every working relationship.
It's amazing.
Here's who I am.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, how many times, we do it all the time. It's like, imagine Adam is an incredible introvert, right? And all I do as a people leader is public recognition. He's going to hate that. Like, I'd like to bring Adam up on stage, right? And he's, like that.
Luckily, I'm not.
It takes a little bit of getting to know your people and the people you're working with and what motivates them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Vesti Grain, and I'm an undergraduate student. My question for you is, could you walk us through your typical day, like from sunup to sundown?
Wow. No, I mean, the reason I'm hesitating, I don't know if I have a typical day. Jeez. So I travel about 25% of the time, so I'm sort of out with either the company or my team. So I'll say a typical day is when I'm in Jersey, or a normal day in the office. I get up at 6. I make the kids lunches. I usually bring one of my 3 kids, either 2 of them go to one school, one of them goes to the other. I usually bring one of them to school. And then I'll be in the office around, I don't know, usually before 8:15 or 8. And then, I don't know, typical day. I find in my job, like, and as you progress in different jobs, like the expectation's different. So I think you get to a certain point where you get paid to answer questions, and to have the right answers, and then you get paid at a certain point to ask the right questions. And a lot of my day, quite honestly, is removing obstacles and barriers, cheerleading, connecting dots. Like, I've made more decks. I still make decks every day. Like, I still work on slides, and there's a little bit of bureaucracy in there. But typically, a lot of meetings with this, generally with that sort of spectrum. I always have an hour blocked off for lunch. I don't always eat for an hour, but I always block I don't do 30-minute meetings and hour meetings. I always do 25 and 55 so that I have a few minutes to reorient myself. I don't stay very late. Like, I'll get home usually around 6, and then I'm taking a kid to their activities. And then I'll work for another couple hours, and then I'll work out, like I said. So maybe that's a little bit of a typical day.
Mine's not. Mine's similar. I think my kids are a little bit younger. So I have a 6 and a 3-year-old. So work calls start early. So calls anywhere between 7 and 8 o'clock, and I'm like multitasking, trying to help get kids, lunches and stuff ready. And then I'll usually break at about 9:30 after calls to get to the office. Work, leave after rush hour, come home. So I spend more time kind of, because I can't get there for 9. So, but then when I'm there, it's similar to you. I try to do those 25 minutes. They're very hard. But my day is typically prepping materials for you to review.
Yeah. I do all my Asia calls at nighttime, right, which is their morning time. And I have that morning time. Like, Adam's doing calls at 7. I mean, once in a while you'll get like something you can't miss, but I generally keep the mornings, with the family, and then, Yeah. It's again, like you think about that, you might have 3 hours with your family a day. How do you extend your best energy there?
Very much appreciated. Really, you appreciate your time, excellence, but also really the feedback. I think we got a lot of nuggets today and some really good advice on, on life balance, but also how to succeed and, the drive needed to be successful. So I wish you all lots of luck in everything. Thank you to the audience for coming this evening. I hope you'll join us in the spring for our next batch of executive speakers. And if we don't see all of you, we want to wish you guys a good holiday. And of course, to our guests tonight, once again, thank you, everybody. So have a good night. Get home safely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I gotta call my car guy before he leaves. Are we running late? Are we running?